ending his mission in the material world. And among his final duties was his giving complete guidelines on how to die. He was perfectly showing how to do that which everyone has to do, but which is most difficult to do successfully: die. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada influenced many, and one among those was George Harrison. Everyone knows him. He wrote a song. What did he write? What was the song called? The Art of Dying. He also wrote My Sweet Lord, and many others related to Prabhupada. But the Art of Dying is something that's bhajan karo, pujan karo, matli janli hoy. Prabhupada said in many places, but also in Vrindavan, he said your bhajan and your puja, your devotion and your service, your sadhana, everything related to your, will be tested at the time of death. Will be tested at the time of death. So that is the ultimate. And it is that fear, nehabhakramanasasti pattivayanavijate, that Krishna consciousness has given to any who want to take it up seriously. Fearlessness. Sometimes you look around in India, I used to see quite frequently, people have a tendency to put their personality on their cars. They put bumper stickers, they put all types of decals. And one decal that was prominent in India and other places was fearless. Right, all plastered on the wall. But what is that fearless? Their fearlessness is not fearlessness, not in knowledge of the ultimate demise of this material body, but their fearlessness is simply recklessness. Recklessness in confronting the so-called realities of life, running, as they say, headlong into disaster. Headlong. So we have an opportunity here in a very, very famous shloka, but because it's two shlokas, the first one also has a purport. We're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, Volume 1, texts 45 and 46. Okay. Text 45 and 46, Adi Leela, Volume 1. Huh? This is chapter 1, Adi, as far as I know. Let's see. What is that chapter? Oh, no, it says Adi 1. On this, it says Adi 1, 45 and 46. So, I mean, as far as I know, this is the first chapter. We're in the, Adi 1 is first chapter. It's Adi Leela, chapter 1, text 45 and 46. And is our AV up and running, Mr. Natabar? We have to check with Natabar. Make sure it's functioning. Okay. Bye-bye, Moti. Bye-bye, Moti. Tata. So I'll read the first shloka and the translation and the purport, and then we'll chant the second shloka, text 46. Guru Krishna Rupahanya Shastrera Pramane Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Karena Bhaktagane. According to the deliberate opinion of all revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non-different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of the spiritual master, delivers his devotees. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The relationship of a disciple with his spiritual master is as good as his relationship with the Supreme Lord. A spiritual master always represents himself as the humblest servitor of the personality of Godhead. But the disciple must look upon him as the manifested representation of Godhead. Text 46, please repeat. Acharyang mam vijanayan. Acharyang mam vijanayan. Navamanyet karhichit. Navamanyet karhichit. Namartya budya suyeta. Namartya budya suyeta. Sarvadeva mayo guru. Sarvadeva mayo guru. Please chant. Acharyang mam vijanayan. Navamanyet kaichit. Namartya budya suyeta. Sarvadeva mayo guru. Acharyang mam vijanayan. Navamanyet kaichit. Namartya budya suyeta. Sarvadeva mayo guru. Ladies. Acharyang mam vijanayan. Navamanyet kaichit. Namartya budya suyeta. Sarvadeva mayo guru. Acharyang mam vijanayan. Navamanyet kaichit. Namartya budya suyeta. Sarvadeva mayo guru. Acharyam, the spiritual master. Mam, myself. Vijanayat, one should know. Na avamanyeta, one should never disrespect. Kaichit, at any time. Na, never. Martya budya, with the idea of his being an ordinary man. Asuyeta, one should be envious. Sarvadeva, of all demigods. Maya, representative. Guru, the spiritual master. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the demigods. Purport. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:17-27, spoken by Lord Krishna when he was questioned by Uddhava regarding the four social and spiritual orders of society. The Lord was specifically instructing how a brahmachari should behave under the care of a spiritual master. A spiritual master is not an enjoyer of facilities offered by his disciples. He is like a parent. Without the attentive service of his parent, a child cannot grow to manhood. Similarly, without the care of the spiritual master, one cannot rise to the plane of transcendental service. The spiritual master is also called Acharya, or a transcendental professor of spiritual science. The Manu Samhita 2:140 explains the duties of an Acharya, describing that a bona fide spiritual master accepts charge of disciples, teaches them the Vedic knowledge with all its intricacies, and gives them their second birth. The ceremony performed to initiate a disciple into the study of spiritual science is called upaniti, or the function that brings one nearer to the spiritual master. One who cannot be brought nearer to a spiritual master cannot have a sacred thread, and thus he is indicated to be a Shudra. The sacred thread in the body of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Sri Shivadagovinda Ki Jai. The sacred thread in the body of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya is a symbol of initiation by the spiritual master. It is worth noting, it is worth nothing if worn merely to boast of high parentage. The duty of the spiritual master is to initiate a disciple with the sacred thread ceremony. And after this sanskar, or purificatory process, the spiritual master actually begins to teach the disciple about the Vedas. A person born a Shudra is not barred from such spiritual initiation, provided he is approved by the spiritual master, who is duly authorized to award a disciple the right to be a Brahmana, if he finds him perfectly qualified. In the Vayu Purana, an acharya is defined as one who knows the import of all Vedic literature, explains the purpose of the Vedas, abides by their rules and regulations, and teaches his disciples to act in the same way. Only out of his immense compassion does the personality of Godhead reveal himself as a spiritual master. Therefore, in the dealings of an acharya, there are no activities but those of transcendental loving service to the Lord. He is the supreme personality of service to Godhead. It is worthwhile to take shelter of such a steady devotee who is called Ashraya Vigraha, or the manifestation or form of the Lord, of whom one must take shelter. If one poses himself as an acharya but does not have an attitude of servitorship to the Lord, he must be considered an offender, and his offensive attitude disqualifies him from being an acharya. The bona fide spiritual master always engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By this test, he is known to be a direct manifestation of the Lord and a genuine representative of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Such a spiritual master is known as Acharya Dev, influenced by an envious temperament and dissatisfied because of an attitude of sense gratification. Mundaners criticize a real Acharya. In fact, however, a bona fide Acharya is not different from the personality of Godhead, and therefore to envy such an Acharya is to envy the personality of Godhead himself. This will produce an effect subversive of transcendental realization. As mentioned previously, a disciple should always respect the spiritual master as a manifestation of Sri Krishna. But at the same time, one should always remember that a spiritual master is never authorized to imitate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. False spiritual masters pose themselves as identical with Sri Krishna in every respect to exploit the sentiments of their disciples. But such impersonalists can only mislead their disciples, for their ultimate aim is to become one with the Lord. This is against the principles of the devotional cult. The real Vedic philosophy is Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, which establishes everything to be simultaneously one with and different from the personality of Godhead. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami confirms that this is the real position of a bona fide spiritual master, and says that one should always think of the spiritual master in terms of his intimate relationship with Mukunda, Sri Krishna. Srila Jiva Goswami, in his Bhakti Sandarbha 213, has clearly explained that a pure devotee's observation of the spiritual master and Lord Shiva as being one with the personality of Godhead exist in terms of their being very dear to the Lord, not identical with him in all respects. Following in the footsteps of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami, later acharyas like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur have confirmed the same truths. In his prayers to the spiritual master, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms that all the revealed scriptures accept the spiritual master to be identical with the personality of Godhead, because he is a very dear and confidential servant of the Lord. Gaudiya Vaishnavas therefore worship Srila Gurudev, the spiritual master, in light of his being the servitor of the personality of Godhead. In all the ancient literatures of devotional service, and in the more recent songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and other unalloyed Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is always considered either one of the confidential associates of Srimati Radharani or a manifested representation of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. Om Jnana Tamaranda Shagananjana Shlakaya Chakshura Mutamin Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Banghaite Gurum Yakipatamam Bande Shri Gurum Daratanam. Translation again. One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the demigods. So this very important verse is thoroughly elaborated upon by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who, as we all know, is the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This is interesting for us as members to acknowledge this, but not everyone is able to perceive the identity of the spiritual master as hinted herein, that only by the mercy of Krishna, and of course Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself declared, Guru Krishna Kripai Bhai Bhakti Lata Bij, that it is only by the mercy of Guru and Krishna that one gets this opportunity to begin, just like we see now with Tulsi on the roof. She's flourishing. She's getting everything she needs, especially love and attention by her devotee servants. And she's constantly putting up new small plants from the manjaris. So from this one Tulsi, we see that there are thousands and thousands of manjaris, and from these manjaris there are thousands and thousands of seeds. So in this way, we see that in this, Srila Prabhupada has planted the seed. And matter of fact, we're reading Lilamrita, and very appropriately, the title of the book is Planting the Seed. So who can do that? Who is that person who is so expert? Many we have come and attempted such an endeavor. And Prabhupada has given some brief comments in this regard. And nowadays we see more and more people are trying to revise history. Everywhere you look, there's some attempt to try to bring into focus some previous personality who say, oh, they were the first to come and bring yoga to the United States. But what they brought was something which was not, just like if I bring you a sterile, there are certain animals, what do they call them? Mudha. They cannot reproduce. They're the product of two animals, a horse and a mule. But the offspring of that animal, it cannot reproduce. Because Krishna has made it that way. One mistake is enough. Of course, there are many such mistakes like that. So many people came, but they had no capacity, no potency. And they didn't have the most important ingredient. They didn't have the blessing of Guru and Krishna. And Prabhupada tells that story all the time about that Swami who gave some benediction to his disciple and then fell down on the floor, fainted, crying. And when the disciple asked him, why are you crying? He said, because I have given you everything. Now I have nothing. Now I have nothing. And these are the two people prominent, of course, amongst the new era, new generation, whatever you want to call, New Age yogis. Because there's nothing, no substance, no real substance. But they can bluff. Very easy to bluff. If you have the right attitude, even if you have nothing. These people who are playing professionally poker, they have a term. What's it called? Poker face. Poker face means you don't reveal what you have in your hand. And so in this way you can bluff somebody. And so cheaters and the cheated being what they are, many people fell into this trap, very flowery language, Veda Vata, Rata, this very flowery language, no substance. So who are those fortunate persons who came into contact with a bona fide spiritual master? we can see, practically speaking, which is why it is such an imperative upon those who have taken this ashraya tattva, the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, to bring others, to save them from these cheaters and cheated. This is our humble effort, not for any other purpose, not to get some name and fame, some title, some puja, pratishtha. Well, only if we can, just like today, we have a big program on Atlantic Avenue. Thousands and thousands of people. And everyone will have an opportunity to take prasadam, take the literature, and give a donation. And in that way, they can begin their journey. There was that Prabhupada's letter to Tamal Krishna. And when he gives him that, he says, what will your 2-minute speaking do? What will your 2 minutes? So we want to give them a book and get them to take prasadam. That is our main effort in this regard. Everything else will come by Guru's grace. By Guru's grace. Because the potency is there. Just by our presence, we're extending this potency, just like electrification. You have everyone who's lived on a farm. We had farm New Ramanreti. You have it's an electric fence. They call them a cattle fence, cow fence. It's just meant to give a little shock so that they don't press against it. Because a big animal, cow, 1,200 pounds, all they have to do is lean on the fence and the fence goes down. Right? Such a big body. Doesn't matter how strong those fence posts are or how tight, except barbed wire, but we don't use barbed wire in the devotee communities. But we do have an electric fence going across the top. It's just one thin wire. And so when the cow comes to examine it, he touches that and he gets a little shock. And then he thinks, okay, therefore I won't lean on this fence. I won't mess with it anymore. So we have an opportunity to so many situations where people are being shocked, because they don't have any, and they're getting constantly kicked. The material nature has foiled them in every respect. And they don't know that if they just pull the plug on that electric fence, then they're free. So our giving them these books, this extending of the real electrification, will nullify that false electrification, that illusion that I'm entrapped, that I'm contained, that I can't escape, or that this actually is reality, that matrix, the blue pill and the red pill. Right? Did you see that movie, Matrix? You didn't watch? One of the few. Who saw The Matrix? Who watched The Matrix? It's a movie. It's a movie. It's a Matrix movie. The movie. No, it's a movie. It's based on the premise that everyone is an illusion. Right? Everyone is connected to Maya. But then somebody who's not in Maya can come and unplug you and bring you back to reality. Right? But many people don't like reality. They're trying to escape reality, and they'd much prefer to be an illusion. And so they want to continue fooling themselves, and accepting that this is there. But the spiritual master is so merciful that he gives an opportunity for those who are sincere to have the realization that if I can just take shelter, just like coming out of the cold or coming out of the rain, if I can just take shelter of this person, if I have a little intelligence to recognize the opportunity, then my position is secure as long as I can maintain it. As long as I can maintain it. And so this maintenance is being done by this Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevya. that there's humility, the submissive inquiry, and service. And these are not, how can you say, artificial requirements that are being imposed. We have a natural tendency to serve, but we've been misdirecting it. As soon as we find that here's a person who is worthy of service, it's like everyone is going, so many people going to work every day. They have to do whatever the boss tells them to do. There's one nice young man, he comes, and unfortunately, he has to work in a place where they serve meat. And he's thinking, I cannot survive without this job. I said, you could move into the ashram. But he's stuck because his parents, he gives some problems. So we've all been in that situation at one point. The idea is to somehow or other pray in a sincere way so that Krishna will make the arrangement to become free. But if I don't make any attempt, if I don't make an attempt to escape, like the cow touching that electric fence, he thinks, no, I can't do this. He thinks, no, I can't. I have to work hard like an ass. Then he remains trapped in that. So therefore, that first prayer they're alluded to, Vishwanath Chakravarti, the Sangsara Davana Alalita Loka. So the spiritual master, he extinguishes the fire of birth and death. But how does he do that? First, he extinguishes by knowledge. Om Jnana Timirandasya. What is illusion? Because when we discuss illusion, you have to know what is the definition. That which is not. All right? People have experience with hallucinations or magicians. They make something disappear or make something appear by sleight of hand. But to understand the real nature of illusion, the imperfect senses, the tendency to make mistakes, to be illusioned, this is the knowledge which is required in order to navigate the winding road of the material world. Whether one has fully surrendered, because due to the material nature, one will always have, as long as he has this material body, Prabhupada said, there will be this pushing of the senses up to the point of death. It's not that they cease, but one is able to control them. And so therefore, we see that this is always stressed in every respect, that one has to, first of all, control the senses. Because otherwise, just like taking medicine, the medicine says take it morning and evening. So if you don't follow the instructions of the pharmacist, of the doctor, you say, no, I'm just going to take it once a week. No, then what's the point? I'll just chant my rounds every other day, or just on Ekadasi, maybe, something like that. Right? I'll make some judgment. No, I'll just go to Vrindavan during Kartik, because everything you do in Vrindavan is 10,000 times. So if I just chant for a couple of days in Kartik, I'm good for the rest of my life. Some people think like that. But you can't cheat Krishna, because the purification process, just like, so you take a bath in the Jamuna one time during Kartik, then you don't take a bath again for how many? You never take a bath again. I want to remain in the mood of the Jamuna. No. So we have to daily take this, bathe in the nectar of the holy names. Because we have to remember, what is that taste? Everything can be forgotten. Maya has those two potencies, throwing and covering. And so, why is it so important not to commit offenses? It's because that's how Maya has the opportunity. She sees, okay, every once in a while she'll throw a little diluting potency on you to see whether or not you pass that test. And these tests come in various forms. Pick one. Everyone's encountering every day some temptation. It was famously brought to light. We saw that in the New Testament, where Christ went for 40 days to abstain. Therefore, they have this period called Lent, when you're supposed to abstain from certain things which you find favor with, in order to replicate this austerity. And during that time, supposedly, there was much temptation, right? It was like Prahlad Maharaj. Christ was offered the kingdom of God, or a kingdom as good as the kingdom of God. Supposedly by, some personality that they relate to called Satan, Lucifer. Right? But Lord Nrsingadev, he offered Prahlad Maharaj the same kingdom. And he also had no desire to engage in such activities. And this is what was missing in that purport, at least to the general mass of people, that when you choose God, when you choose devotional service, everything else is contained within it. It's not that you get something less than the so-called kingdom of heaven. And the devotee never feels like he needs anything. So that is another aspect of that realization, that Krishna is giving so much, promise of pleasure. Right? And this is all that everything in the material world is simply a promise of pleasure. That chewing the chewed example is meant to illustrate that. That in India we see it very clearly, and in America they don't so much. They have one example in America. Do you know that example? They have something called chewing gum. You know chewing gum? Right? So when you chew this gum, all the flavor goes out. So then you have to discard it and you have to get more. Right? But when you put it someplace else, maybe somebody thinks, no, maybe there's a little flavor, and I'll chew that. Right? But there's no such thing. So in India, when they run the sugar cane through the machine and they squeeze out all the juice, and they do it 2 or 3 times and then discard it, then the donkeys come, then the cows come. Everybody comes to try to suck some pleasure. Because in itself, it looks like sugar cane, but the juice has been removed. So the only thing that's left is the promise of pleasure. But the pleasure is already gone. It's been removed. So in this way, we have to develop that understanding that I've been in this material world how many times? How many times have I had the opportunity to experience the same pleasure, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending? So many times. Then what is the use of the continuing to try to squeeze some pleasure out of the same exact activities, which is basically the definition of insanity? Right? To do the same thing and expect a different result. To do the same thing constantly and expect a different result. That is the definition of insanity. So in the whole material world, Prabhupada wrote that essay, Who is Crazy? In The Reservoir of Pleasure. Very nice little essay, Who is Crazy? Right? So anyone who is not seeking after the absolute truth, who's not trying to escape, he's crazy. If you see a person, if you're in a prison and you have a perfect plan to get out, and you tell that person, come with me, we're going to go over the wall tonight. And he said, no, I don't want to go. I'm happy here. I got a place to sleep. They feed me 3 times a day. I get medical. Nothing to worry about. But he's a prisoner. He has no real freedom. He's just being maintained bodily necessities. So we have to have the mentality to escape at every moment, whatever it is that's attempting to bind us, right? Nobody stands still and lets somebody tie their hands. You know, you say, no, you want to become free. If somebody comes up and grabs you, you don't want to stay in that situation. You want to break free. So we've been conditioned to accept this enslavement. And it's all wrapped up in a very nice package. And the only person, and who can imagine the mercy of the spiritual master who takes so much effort. We have Srila Prabhupada's shoes here in the museum. When you see those shoes, he walked around for 1 year in these flimsy rubber shoes. There's nothing. There's no insulation. You know, when you go out and you want to go hiking or this, you pick a very nice boot, top of the line, gives you all the support you want. It's waterproof. It's everything. And Prabhupada came to New York just at the beginning of one of the coldest winters in New York history. And when you see those shoes worn thin, actually holes in them, and what he had to do, he had to put cardboard inside to line them, to give minimum insulation. You know, so this is the sacrifice that a pure devotee is willing to do. That Krishna's, he is so dear to Krishna. And he is so, in himself, so devoted to Krishna that he's willing to do anything, whatever is required. You order the spiritual master, go to the Western priest. Yeah. Therefore, it remained like that seed in his heart until the opportunity, until Krishna made all arrangements. And we see how that works. And then you can do it or not. Krishna is giving you all facility. Just like we see devotees come many times and we speak to them. And they're coming and coming and coming. One of my godbrothers, nice devotee, I was coming to the Sunday feast. I was enjoying everything. The devotees were so nice. We had such nice conversations. The prasadam was so nice. Kirtan, everything was so nice. But at the end of the night, I went home. And then again, I came back in the next week. You know? And the devotees, of course, are trying to say, well, what are you doing with your life? And, you know, I wasn't doing anything important. You know, nobody's really doing anything important. But we think that we're doing something important. But I was not doing it. I was just making money. You know, you do what you do. And so he told me, he said, you know, Krishna is a person. Okay, I was gradually beginning to understand that. In the beginning, I could not relate to Radha Govinda, who are still having mercy upon me after 49 years. And I saw them, and obviously, my seeing is nothing, and their seeing is everything. And so through the devotees, through the mercy of the devotees, they're trying to take away all my doubts, why I should not move into the temple. And so he told me, he said, you know, Krishna is a person. So back to Krishna is a person. He said, and he's inviting you. And you're like not accepting this invitation. He said, so how long do you think he'll continue to invite you? He says, if you invite someone and they never come, you stop inviting them. You know? What does it say, right? When you get an invitation, RSVP. Respondez-vous s'il vous plaît. Please respond. In other words, give some indication. I'm coming, I'm not coming. Maybe I'm coming. So when he said that to me, it was a bit of a wake-up call. I said, yes, I'm taking Krishna for granted. I'm thinking I can have everything and at the same time still try to keep one foot in the material pleasure realm. But Krishna showed that, no, you cannot do that. If you're really serious about spiritual life, you cannot do that. And then he gave me the biggest kicking you can ever experience. Because Krishna is very merciful. right? Asishiva padaratam panastuma. Whether he kicks you or embraces you. But practically speaking, for us, in being so entangled in the material world, mostly it comes as kicking, so that we can, what did our forefathers used to say? Knock some sense into your head. All right? Anybody have a parent that would say that to you? You missed it. Knock some sense into your head when you're doing something stupid. It says, a parent will have that. That's one of the terms at least in America, that was common. Knock some sense into your head. Of course, So this situation, Krishna, sometimes he has to knock some sense into your head by some kicking. And if you're lucky, you realize that, yes, there is no enjoyment in the material world. It's all suffering. But you were kind of avoiding that realization. Thinking, oh, it's okay, it's just life. Yeah, people say that, it's just life. Getting kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked. And they think it's just life, right? But how foolish is that? Like the Mudha, we have all these wonderful analogies, from the various Niti Shastra that give examples through how when you're the jackass approaches the female jackass, he has to get repeatedly kicked in the face. Repeatedly. And of course, if you go to India, you see this and you think, it's amazing. No one wants to get kicked by a mule. Anyone ever get kicked by a mule? I got kicked by a horse. It's not a pleasant thing. So who can imagine getting kicked by a mule repeatedly? Because they're famous for kicking. Very famous. But we can be enlightened simply by hearing from the spiritual master. So that was the key, was to graduate from the school of prasadam to the school of listening to Srila Prabhupada's lectures. Right? And that was, there was some fear that this knowledge might ruin my material life. So I was hesitant. I'd already read the Bhagavad Gita, and it was bad enough that I knew something of the truth, and I couldn't go fully back to the material world. But I was still, somehow or other, trying to do this balancing act. But as soon as I heard Srila Prabhupada, my material life was finished. The first lectures was a series of lectures called the Yoga System. 7 cassettes, 7 lectures, which is now we're reading Path to Perfection, 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada lectured on that, 1968, Los Angeles. And it was so clear what he was saying that I knew that I would have to join. But still I was somehow hesitating like that. But it was clear. This is the Om Jnana Tamandasya Gananjana Shlaka. Who else can open your eyes like that? Except the pure devotee. Literally open your eyes. And everyone who comes to Krishna consciousness has this experience. They're reading Prabhupada's books. And their eyes become opened by the torchlight of knowledge. So it's a very special relationship that and it is available to the entire world. And we get the privilege to distribute these books. It's a great privilege to have an opportunity to serve someone who is so exalted. We talk about, the so-called presidents or the so-called kings. And these titles, these positions are insignificant. Insignificant. The pure devotee, the direct servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Now that's a position to aspire to. But only those few people will take that, you know. And therefore, one can never consider the spiritual master as an ordinary person. This is, otherwise, how can he have Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yata Devi Tatago? How can he have implicit faith? If he thinks that there's something, that this person is just some academic who achieved a certain level of mastery in communication, and therefore he's presenting something like that. So there are so many people like that. And if someone has that unfortunate mentality, then he will never get access. He cannot get access. And Prabhupada quoted that verse, and I was listening to it in a lecture. And it'll come to me. So this is, he reserves the right, Krishna reserves the right to be known. And the spiritual master also has that prerogative. He doesn't have to reveal himself if someone is not serious. But you see how Prabhupada was so loving to his disciples. And when in 1976, when Prabhupada came for the Rath Yatra, the first New York City Rath Yatra, like a magnet, so many devotees from New York who had kind of fallen away. When Prabhupada came, they all came back to see him. And many came because they had that connection. You know, that connection was not so strong that it could survive Prabhupada's absence. They were weak, immature, like young children. At that time, even in 1976, it was only 10 years. Just before coming to New York, in Washington, D.C., they had celebrated the 10th anniversary of the incorporation of ISKCON in July of 1966. And so these devotees who are my godbrothers, and Prabhupada he's acknowledging each one, and he's asking, oh, well, what about this one? And what about that one? And what about this one? Because these are all like his children. He said, yes, he's a good boy, but he's weak, you have to watch him. When he's a good boy, he's weak, you have to watch him. And he all knew all their excellent qualities. Oh, he was an excellent cook. He was very good. And he's an excellent kirtan person. And he could sing very nicely. Prabhupada's going through this whole list. And those people came and they got Prabhupada's darshan again, but then again they left. Every single one. But somehow or other, and Prabhupada gave us famously, he said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. So, but we understand that the compassion of the spiritual master is unlimited. These devotees who had fallen away, Prabhupada gave them complete access to him, just to try to rescue them. Complete access. We were all a little jealous, but what's the point? There's no. I was happy for them, but at the same time I was thinking, if I could just have that association. But Prabhupada gave us so many opportunities to associate with him. We just had to recognize that each one had its own unique flavor. That same devotee who was telling me, if you don't accept Krishna's invitation, he's going to stop inviting you. When I finally moved into the temple as a new devotee, Prabhupada was coming. He said, I'd like you to take care of Prabhupada's quarters. We have things which need to be repaired. I was a handy person. I could fix things. When I first came to the temple, whatever I saw broken, I would fix. And Krishna's mercy for someone who has no other good qualities. So the windows that faced the street, Henry Street, were broken because the neighborhood kids would throw rocks at them and break the glass. Because we weren't exactly popular in the neighborhood at the time. It was an all-Italian neighborhood, not too far from here. Mostly mafia, like that, in those days. And so some of their kids were becoming favorable. They would come to the feast, we would feed them, and they would go home and they would tell their parents, we don't want to eat meat anymore. Boy, that caused a revolution. All of a sudden, our cars were being stripped, set on fire. We were being given notice that, you're not welcome in this neighborhood. But Prabhupada was such an expert person, he said, no, you can take care of this. But we were told that we should get something to protect ourselves. And this is what the police told us. They said, we can't be here all the time. You have to protect yourself. So we went out and we bought 5 shotguns. And the day we walked into the temple with those shotguns on our shoulders, in the boxes, of course, from that point on, we never had any trouble. Because they knew there's 5 shotguns in the temple. Prabhupada's very expert. He knew how to do it. He was the one who said, yes, go get these. So this, we still have one, by the way. If anybody's thinking of anything. So I got the chance to be intimately associated with Prabhupada, although I was a bhakta. All these devotees, and what was the time for taking care of Prabhupada's quarters was when Prabhupada was on a morning walk. So I didn't get the association to be with him on the morning walk, but I got to be in his quarters, and I would get to clean the desk, which is sitting inside that room, right there, in the back there, and empty his loda, which is also back in that room. And so I had this service, and I didn't appreciate it at first, and that's because it just seems like so routine. You're just cleaning. But later on, when I had a little intelligence from chanting and from reading, I recognized that somehow or other Krishna had given me a very sweet opportunity to serve the pure devotee, even though I was totally unqualified, and to serve him in such a way that only his servants got to serve him. Because no one was allowed in Prabhupada's room in the back there just to do this, to clean, things like that. So yeah, a very interesting way that Krishna tricks you into developing attachment. So I became very much attached to Prabhupada and just serving him, and I just always wanted to serve. And so every time Prabhupada, when he would come to New York, and when he came in July, I got to again serve, because everybody wanted to go on the morning walks. And that same devotee who had engaged me previously said, no, this is your opportunity. You get to stay and clean Prabhupada's quarters, just like always. I said, yes, I'm more than happy to do so. More than happy. And later I would see the devotees who would be on the morning walk. The only 3 or 4 senior men were up with Prabhupada. Everybody else is in the back, trailing. You can't get close. You can't all crowd around Prabhupada. Prabhupada would walk so quick, you hardly had to run practically to keep up with him. So on this morning, the only person who had association with Prabhupada was the person who was recording the conversation, the morning walk, and a few people who could ask questions. And meanwhile, I'm back there and I'm getting to clean all of Prabhupada's personal paraphernalia, and somehow or other feel useful, actually useful. One time Prabhupada told one of my Gar brothers, who was always hanging around Prabhupada and doing funny things, like he would throw flower petals in front of him or something like that when he would walk. And Prabhupada stopped one time and he put his cane down. He said, why don't you do something practical? So it's not by flattery or something like that, no. You have to do it, something. This is how you show the spiritual master that, yes, I may not be so advanced in so many ways, but I understand that if I just stick close to you. He actually told that to one God brother who had a similar mood. He said, Prabhupada, I'm not anything. I don't have any qualification. I'm not this, I'm not that. And Prabhupada said, I know a shortcut. He said, his question was, how can I ever go back to Godhead? And Prabhupada said, I have a shortcut. Right? What's that shortcut? He said, just hold on to my dhoti. So we have to find that way to please the spiritual master to that extent that if we want to get noticed, it's not just that. You have to do something that either no one else is willing to do or no one else can do. You find that niche, you find that position, and then you will never have any real difficulty in spiritual life. And the spiritual master, he will always remain prominent in your mood or whatever you're doing. And without this ability, without this consciousness, you cannot continue long, simply thinking that I'm a devotee. Just mano tenasiti daivato bihi. You get the opportunity, but if you don't do something practical for Prabhupada, then you won't last. You won't last. Just like if you have sometimes a person injures his hand, and then the finger or the arm or the limb, it withers. They call it atrophy. So it becomes useless. And there's that saying in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's asara. Asara. Asara means useless. So if you can't do something for the spiritual master, if you can't make the attempt and continually strive for that, to please that one person who can acknowledge you, in some way. First, of course, if he sees fit to give you initiation, and if you have the opportunity to serve in any capacity, this is the key. Whatever it is, but it should be something that the spiritual master requires, not that I make something up out of thin air that I think Prabhupada would like this, or I think my Guru Maharaj would like this. No. Prabhupada also said that the first-class servant is the one who understands what the master wants without being told to do it. Without being told to do it. So that's how much you have to meditate on the mood of the spiritual master, to know what does he want and how to offer it without being asked. And then first of all, he wants our surrender. Not artificially, not in a pretend way. Just like you've seen people like that. This false humility. They go up and they just constantly, and that's that devotee who was throwing the flowers. Prabhupada said, do something practical. Don't make a show of this. No, this is useless to try to impress. And then there's no substance. You're not really doing anything. You have to do something. When you do something, Krishna will see you. Prabhupada said, work in such a way that Krishna will see you. So what to speak? Work in such a way that the spiritual master will see you. He will take notice that this person is doing very nicely. Like Prabhupada was saying, and this person was he knew that this person could lead a nice kirtan. He took notice. He knew that this person could cook nicely. He took notice. But he also said, what did he say about that one person? He said, you have to watch him with the ladies. So spiritual master knows everything. So we have a nice opportunity to go out today. We don't want to take too much time. We're already over time. And we're loading the van. The van will go there with all the paraphernalia because the street's closed by 10 a.m. Okay, so if there's anyone here who has the time to help load the van, if it's not already done so, please take a few minutes out of your schedule. Breakfast will still be there, but the van needs to go down. So I would encourage everyone to take literally 5 minutes to see if there's anything left to do. If there's nothing left, that's fine. But this is a day to put your devotion where your sentiment is, right? People always say yes, 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 but then when it comes time to do, they're not there. So today's a day to do. Prabhupada would say, do the needful. Do the needful. When you have a situation like a festival, many things have to be put to the side. Maybe the front lobby won't get vacuumed today because Dr. Ryan realized that in this instance, it's more important to load the van. It's more important to get everything ready to go out on the street, and that we can vacuum a little bit later. So do the needful and prioritize. All right? Okay, so let's get that van loaded and let's get out on the street, and then we'll take breakfast after that. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki, the spiritual master ki. Spiritual master, such a wonderful chapter this is. It's amazing. And this verse, one should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. This is a garland fit for a Maharaja. Sonny, it was made. You don't really, we usually get those garlands here with Radha Govinda special. Any service for us?